Hi everybody and welcome to another WKTV.com video blog where we're continuing to talk about pretty much the tropics is what it's turned to here, because that's the big story of the weather world, and of course the tropics eventually going to be impacting us here as we go into the weekend. It is worth talking about. So take a look at the satellite picture. Gustav, what's left of it lifting into the lakes, that is almost done with, and by this time tomorrow pretty much will be. We just passed by Hanna out there in the Atlantic. Here is Ike. We'll definitely talk about that in just a second, and here is Josephine as well. Our tropical systems all lined up. Another area we're watching right here doesn't look like much at this point, but the National Hurricane Center has deemed it an area to watch. And it will be interesting to see, though, but it's also going to have Ike to deal with, Josephine to deal with, and what Hanna did out there. It's a little bit of a hostile environment right now for another tropical system to form in. Let's talk about the main issue at hand, Hanna. This is the satellite loop this evening as of about 9 o'clock, and you can see, looks like we're starting to get some more convection or thunderstorms firing on the southeastern side. At least we can kind of try and pick out the center probably in there. Hanna, not a very well-organized system, but it's trying its hardest to get its act together. And you notice in the last few frames here, it does look like the area of thunderstorms has expanded a bit, so maybe finally it's starting to get its act together a bit. Wind 65 miles an hour with Hanna at this point in time. It's forecasted to maintain its tropical storm strength into the southeast coast. In fact, we'll take a look at the official National Hurricane Center forecast as we go forward in time. You'll be able to see Hanna forecasted still to make landfall probably in northern South Carolina, southern North Carolina as we go into tomorrow night. Then it lifts up the coast on Saturday and out of here by Sunday, racing into the Canadian Maritimes. Of course, again, notice the track and the cone of error, the area where it could still track, all off to our east. So again, we are going to stay on the western side of this system. The question now becomes, what about the rain from Hanna in our area? Well, to be honest with you, we're not really going to be impacted directly by Hanna itself. We're going to be impacted indirectly. Let's talk about it now. So we take a look at our skycast. We'll take you through the night tonight and into tomorrow. Incidentally, tomorrow in and of itself here, stop you tomorrow morning, winds into the southwest strongly. Notice we really clear out tomorrow morning. We're going to be talking about quite possibly one of the hottest days of the summer tomorrow in September, of course. Temperatures perhaps approaching 90 degrees here in central New York, especially in the valleys. That's a story in and of itself, and that's kind of what happens when you're in this pattern with a tropical system lifting up. It's almost like an autumn storm sometimes, where we'll get late autumn after several days in the 40s and 50s. We'll all of a sudden get a day where it's 70 degrees outside. Well, that's actually going to happen tomorrow to some extent, obviously a different situation, and we're going to probably make a run for 90. Now, as we go into tomorrow night, notice we stay sunny, winds still strongly out of the southwest, some gusts tomorrow as well, perhaps 25, 30, 35 miles an hour on the hilltops across the region. As we go through tomorrow night, watch what happens. The setup is this, stopping you into tomorrow evening. We have a cold front back here to the west. That's draped across areas west of here. We also have Hanna starting to lift up from the south. That's going to be the interesting scenario that we have to deal with here. As this front starts to slide towards us, this acts as a trigger or a focusing spot for precipitation. Hanna, this is not Hanna right here. This is just moisture out ahead of it, because in response to what we're seeing with this front moving through, it's going to allow the combination of the moisture from Hanna and the lifting from this front allows for more rain to develop. And some of it could be heavy here. Now, our skycast is really painting the axis of the heavier rainfall right over us. But notice something. The track of Hanna. This takes Hanna right up the Jersey, interior parts of New Jersey and Delaware. This is about, I would say, 50 to 75 miles further west of where we think Hanna is going to track. The Hanna should be just offshore here, moving into New England. So that's why this axis of heavier rainfall that's being portrayed over us may actually be off to the south and east of us. And that's the card that we're playing right now in the forecast. Yes, we do think there will be rain on Saturday. No, we don't think it's going to be quite as heavy as what Skycast is indicating. It is something worth watching. How much rain? From late Friday night into Sunday morning, this is what we can expect. Sunday, incidentally, will be fine here in central New York. All this will be a memory. I think western New York, unless an area of rainfall, an extra area of rainfall develops out here, otherwise it should be a quarter to a half inch of rain. From Utica south and east to about Cooperstown, Oneonta, a quarter to a half inch to an inch is possible at this point. And then is the extreme southeastern fringe of our viewing area, maybe 1 to 2 inches in this area. And then the red area right here, all bets are off, 2 to 5 inches at least. We could be talking about locally 6, 7, 8 inches of rainfall from this, depending on how the storm actually behaves. Now, the one thing we have to caution is if there's any shift in the track, which can sometimes happen with tropical systems, Well, any one of these areas of rainfall could be further to the south and east, meaning we're drier and we don't see much rain on Saturday, or it could be a little bit further to the north and west, meaning we see a little bit more rain on Saturday than what we're expecting. Time frame looks like late Saturday morning into Saturday afternoon, best chance for rainfall across the region. That's something we're going to be watching. We'll have an update on that for you, of course, as we get into tomorrow. Let's take you out further into the tropics now and talk about the other systems. Here's Josephine. Very, very minimal tropical storm right now. Winds barely holding on at this point in time. Really not forecasted to strengthen much, and it's just kind of meandering. We call these fish storms as they're out there pretty far into the Atlantic right now. One thing we will talk about, though, is the actual computer model forecast. You can see the official National Hurricane Center forecast. Taking it off to the northwest doesn't recurve it or anything like that out 5 days from now. But as you take a look at our computer models, watch what happens as we go forward in time. Again, each one of these lines represents a computer model forecast. An individual model goes out and forecasts the path of the center of the storm out a few days, 4 or 5 days out. And notice there's quite a spread here. Some take it well to the north. Others take it kind of down here to the northwest, similar to where the National Hurricane Center track is. So it's something we'll watch. But Josephine's kind of in an awkward position right now to really undergo development. One thing that is certainly far from awkward is Ike. Look at the visible satellite loop today. Put this in here throughout the day. This is from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Just a beautiful looking storm out there. Of course, if you're underneath it, it's not very beautiful, but it is very nice looking on satellite, a very classic looking hurricane at this point in time. More current imagery showing you it's still well organized. You do notice, though, there's some sort of inhibition going on the northwest side of the storm. We are thinking that there's some shear going on here. Perhaps courtesy of some upper-level disturbances, also courtesy of perhaps the outer fringes of Hanna at this point in time. So it's struggling in that area, but the other side of the storm certainly looking anything but unhealthy at this point in time. Major hurricane, winds up there, very strong. We're talking about 135-mile-an-hour winds right now. Certainly a powerful storm. This thing absolutely exploded last night into a major storm. And it's going to forecast it to continue to be a major storm, fluctuating between Category 2 and 3 strength over the next few days, and then eventually ending up here, the 5-day forecast from the National Hurricane Center. Well, you kind of see the story here. We're talking about a major hurricane in the Bahamas by the time we get to the 5th day of this forecast on Tuesday. Something that we have to watch very, very closely, because obviously the National Hurricane Center forecast, you take that out about another 30 miles, puts it in Miami, Florida. Not exactly what folks want to hear about right now, but it is something that we have to watch. But if you look a little bit deeper at this, and you look at the computer model forecast, this I find to be very interesting. Notice everybody's in pretty good agreement that Ike is going to continue to track off to the west here toward areas where Hanna is actually impacting right now. Ike, however, is either going to, at least according to the computer models, bend to the northwest here. This is what the Hurricane Center seems to be banking on. But there's also the chance that it does bend a little bit further to the north and maybe recurves out to sea. But this second camp is sort of redeveloped today. This was sort of taken off the table yesterday, but it's back now, showing perhaps a track toward the northern fringes of the islands here, maybe right over Cuba, over the Keys. And one of our computer models out to next week takes us into the Gulf of Mexico, taking dead aim on the same areas that were hit by Gustav. Not what people want to hear at all. But this is something that we're going to be watching very closely, because it is quite interesting to see. If history has anything to say about it, you look at storms that have tracked in the past, same time of year, within a few hundred miles of Ike right now. Most of them, all but 1 or 2, have recurved out to sea. So if you go by history alone, Ike shouldn't impact anybody. But you see this and you have to think, well, who knows? At this point in time, it does look like Ike is going to at least make it to somewhere in here between the Bahamas and the islands. At that point, it's either up and out to sea or continuing toward Florida or into the Gulf. Something that's going to be very interesting. So once we get done with Hanna this weekend, we get another storm to track very closely. And behind that, who knows? Maybe we'll have something more to talk about as well. Very busy in the tropics. Peak of hurricane season is September 10th, so we're coming very close to that right now. And we're certainly getting our money's worth this season for sure. We'll have updates for you on this. We'll have more on Hanna's impacts in our area coming up tomorrow when we know a little bit more about the timing of this system. We'll tell you more about that on Friday. In the meantime, have yourself a good night and a good day. Feel free to post any comments or questions that you might have at the bottom of this entry.